Yeah. Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737 pilot and a member of Pmdg's tech team. So today we're going to do things a little bit different than what we usually do on this channel, in that today we are going to fly, first of all, in Asia. Secondly, I am going to mute my own video that I have running in the background. And thirdly, this video is actually going to be based on the Q&As that many of you are asking on the channel and that you can ask in the questions below. And the first question there already from Cloud D Action: any Msfs crashes today? And we'll see. I would say probably. But don't worry too much about it. I think today is going to work out just fine. So if you guys have questions that you always wanted to ask, today's your chance. Today is going to have most of them answered. I'm saying most because there is going to be one question among them that I will not be able to answer. And you guys, especially the frequent viewers on the channel here, will already know what question that is. However, let's start a little bit different today. So I've just installed new repaint here of Lion Air, which we are going to fly today, and this is actually the first time I'm loading this repaint up, so while we're doing it, let's actually head into the flight deck and configure our aircraft first of all. There has not been any airline config provided for this, so we'll have to make something up ourselves. So let's go through sort of a guessing game of what they might or might not have in the flight deck. Now, I know that I could just Google for pictures, but that would take the fun out of it, wouldn't it? So, for the airline equipment then, we have a pretty new aircraft. I believe it's 5 years old, and it is a low-cost aircraft. So, we'll definitely take the Collins MCP. We'll go heading select after takeoff. Last slope capture before localizer, probably deny, and it will be failed passive. Double D-rate, probably yes. Takeoff bump, probably not. Company cost index, let's go low. I know European low-costers are going in the region of 2 to 6, so let's go 6 over here. Yeah, for the GPWS there's not really anything that we could change that would make things, say, more or less realistic, so I'll just take it like this. For the callouts, let's make 500 smart, and I'm not used to those 400, 300, 200, 100 calls because we don't have them in my airline, so I'm not going to use those. The rest of the GPWS is probably going to stay like it is. The airplane will probably not have Atops, I guess. And that we can all leave as it is. Maximum fixed page is 2 because we don't have money to waste. And that's why we will have the ISFD with the RMI, but no yaw damper or head-up display. Performance improvement, yes. Short field, yes. Auto propage, probably. Let's go for carbon brakes today, because why shouldn't we? For the lights, it's a new airplane, so LED sounds good to me. Single class for sure. Air stairs, I have no idea. Let's keep them in. And for the fuel cutoff switches, that's 5 years old. Let's put the new ones in. Wi-Fi antenna, I don't know. Let's go for it. You can still sell Wi-Fi on board, can't you? And we'll probably have the new pressurization panel, and yeah, let's put window shades in because I just like them. For the displays then, ground speed display, why? 100 knots bug, why? Rising runway, navigation performance scales, PLIs, yeah. Radio altitude, let's make it round. I like the round one. And we can probably do something like this. Let's see, track up yes, VSD yes, range arcs yes, alt constraint yes, VOR course lines. God, I hate them. I hate them. Alright, that looks good. Pretty much standard stuff over here. For the all quantity indication, I'll go for quartz, and we don't need any of the bugs here, do we? fuel turtle display probably, and I think that's more or less a good configuration for a low-cost carrier. Finally, let's head over the options real quick, because we do want some failures enabled, of course. And thrust lever position, I like it when moving, just for the manual override. High idle and flare, I'm putting that one on because it really helps achieving a better touchdown rate. It does simulate the approach idle, however, it causes issues in Msfs with reverse thrust activation, but I prefer the gentle touchdown over the thrust reversers in the simulator. And I'm emphasizing in the simulator here because in real life it's of course exactly the other way around. We don't need an airspeed alive call, neither do we need the FO to call out V1 because we have the automatic call out enabled. And for the steering I'm actually using rudder only because in my opinion it works a little bit better than using the tiller. Anyway, that's it for our setup. I think this is probably a very good estimate of what an aircraft, a modern low-cost aircraft may look like. And Ellings, thank you so much for the 55 NOK donation. Thank you so much. Then Chris, first question about the auto ignition option. With that option on takeoff and approach, can the ignition stay on auto instead of switching to continuous? Technically speaking it can. For fleet commonality I would probably still put it into the continuous position, unless the entire fleet is equipped with the auto position, which would mean that for commonality, there is nothing like crew commonality or something, so then you could keep it in the position like that. Then Ronald, how do you know if you had a tail strike? Well, let's put it that way. First of all, because the aircraft is probably going to make strange noises. And secondly, because if you do have a tail strike, your cabin crew is going to hear it in the back, for sure. They are going to give you a call, and maybe you'll be able to feel it in the flight deck, but that's not guaranteed. But you mainly have to rely on the cabin crew hearing it and telling you. Or, of course, air traffic control might see it and tell you. I mean, technically speaking, air traffic control should have an eye out on aircraft taking off, so they should see it. But depending on where you are, I would probably not want to particularly rely on it. Let's put it that way. And Cloud the Action, how was yesterday's flight to Mallorca? Easy going, as always. So, fairly straightforward. Actually, we have not been delayed. I was surprised about that. Then, Brad, with the 737, how do you turn off the nose wheel for takeoff and landing? You can't turn the nose wheel steering off. But what I could recommend you just have to do very small inputs. And that's exactly the same it works in the real life. So you just have to make very small inputs. And Mikolai, IRS fault in flight. Not on today's stream, but I might do it as a separate video. Then, Arcvis Design. Any news on the Pmdg tablets? Nothing new about what has been said earlier on. So, Robert still estimates it to go into beta mid next month, and then we'll see how long that's going to take. And Pete, in Mallorca, you're always landing on the left runway, and they favor the Zulu approaches, not the Yankees. So, ILS Zulu 2 for left. And Borna, I'm an FO. Mikolai asking for the route. Yep, you can get that. In fact, you are quickly going to get the complete operational flight plan, then you just have all the data. So here you are. Alright, so, what else do we have there? Pilot White, have I ever flown to Dublin? Unfortunately, I have. but not too often. In the last 4 years or so, I might have been there like once or twice. Gotta hate the airport. Honestly, hate it. And regarding flight deck to sim, he is right with a couple of the points he's making, like the airplane not slowing down enough. I've raised those same points in the development as well. The problem with that is that you can get it right at, for example, 30,000 feet, so at flight level 300. But if you get it right at flight level 300, it's going to be wrong at level 200 or level 400, and of course at level 100. So you really have to make compromises with the Microsoft Flight Simulator engine, and the current model pretty much is a compromise between what's possible. Now, there are a couple of tricks which might be applied in later updates. For example, what some developers can do to increase the rate of descent is to fake an artificial speed brake, which would extend without actually showing any animations on the model. So the lever wouldn't work, there would not be a visual deployment of the speed brake on the wings, but Flight Simulator internally, it would be extended. So some tricks like that are possible. However, it really is giving people headaches that the Msfs engine is just so limited in terms of what it can do in the flight model regime. That is really unfortunate, but yeah, we just have to live with it, I'm afraid. But the one point that I do not agree with Flight Deck to Sim, however, is the speed of the trim. He literally said the airplane should trim twice as fast as it does right now, and I can absolutely not agree with it. It has to trim a tiny bit faster, yes, that is actually in the bug tracker already, so that is going to see an update soon, but it is not twice as fast, no. A little bit faster, yes. I mean, it's always hard to make statements like this. So in development, of course, the developers are asking me as well, so by how much do we need to increase it? And then I tell them, well, I'm guessing double. Then they do it double, and all of a sudden you end up thinking, whoa, that was far too much. So he might be falling for the same trap that I did myself, which is initially thinking that things should go a lot faster, when actually usually it is not all that bad. But I don't know, maybe 10-20% faster or so, that could definitely be realistic. Matthew, why don't I like Dublin? Well, the controllers are talking very, very fast over there. And they're basically pushing you to go very quick. So, for example, a clearance may look something like that. Airline 539, taxi at 128 via Fox Center Mike, link 3 after the CityJet, behind the ATR via blah blah. So you can't even type it that quickly into the scratch pad, let alone remembering 20 different taxiways and in front of or behind which 3 different aircraft you have to go. That's what I don't like about Dublin. And of course the weather. German flight simmer, how would you know in real life that a tire was damaged? You feel it. So that's definitely something that you would feel when you are taxiing the airplane. It's not going all that round like it normally should, and the whole plane is just shaking a little bit, vibrating, and you need more thrust than you normally would. And of course, air traffic control would once again tell you, because they are going to see it. But of course, there have been occasions in the past where aircraft have taxied in and only at the gate they noticed something was wrong, so that definitely happens as well. But of course, it depends a lot on the actual kind of damage that has happened. You know, if the tire is just punctured by a rock or something like that, then it might not immediately become apparent, because the rock might just be stuck in the tire. And maybe the people sitting above the wheel would feel it, but the pilot wouldn't. So, then again, of course, you have taxiways. I'm thinking of Corfu here, where the taxiways are in such a bad shape that you're taxiing over it and you always have that feeling like the airplane's breaking apart. So, yeah, that's probably not making things a lot easier. But, yeah, in the end it just comes down to experience, literally. With the experience you get to know what the aircraft feels like normally, and then when something deviates from the norm, then you start thinking about, okay, so what is wrong here, what might be happening, and what could be going on right now. Ooh, that was a little fast. Just trying to get the setup done, because I have to go flying later on again as well. So I'm not going to be here eternally today, but we certainly have plenty of time to fly this flight, probably answer a couple of questions afterwards. Provided my sim doesn't bring me back to the desktop, of course. But we'll have to see about that when we actually get there. Then, Avil, is it normal that the cabin lighting dimming is not functional? At the moment it is. I believe Pmdg is working on something related with the tablet, that they might do a more sophisticated system there, but not 100% sure. Cabanas, virtually in the sim we're going to fly to Bali, and in real life, once again, Palma de Mallorca. How can you notice it's summer season? All German pilots at all times are going to Mallorca. Okay, so, let's actually do a quick route check, so that we can actually get our flight going, because, well, the flight is not as short as it used to be yesterday, so we'll have a little bit of time en route as well. So we're going from Whiskey Triple India to Whiskey Alpha Delta Delta Lima November India 022. And our routing is from Charlie Alpha. Oh yeah, lovely Navigraph naming issue once again. That is something that's hopefully going to be worked on in the future. So, Charlie Alpha, Tango 3, Alpha November Yankee, Golf 461 to Bravo Alpha, and Tango 3 to Mofmo. Give me a ground distance of 591 versus 585, 3.2 remaining, and we're supposed to have 2.2. So that's 25 minutes extra time that we are going to have available. Right, altimeters 1006, reading 20 feet. Time UTC 0921. MFRA is going to be 1020 initially, and these damper instruments are set. Flight directors. Come on. Flight directors are on. So, it's going to be a lefty takeoff, runway 25 right, flaps 5, noise abatement departure number 2, and we are... yeah, we don't have any specials, YOSIT straight ahead, 3,000 feet, and apart from that, nothing really. Emergencies is briefed in the crew room. For the pushback and the taxi, it's going to be a pushback with a nose to the left-hand side, and then via the parallel taxiway, November Papa 2 towards holding point November 1. Maybe also via November Papa 1, we'll see about that when we get there. Our departure is the Charlie Alpha to Delta departure. And that departure is taking us straight ahead on the runway heading 248. I'll quickly set that here as well. 248 to an altitude of 1,000 feet, then a right turn to Upnav. Right on 023, 4.7 miles to Arjuna. And then right 082, 19 miles to Runov, and that is below 8,000 feet. Then a right hand turn again, 112, 26.7 to Pepsu, at 10,000 feet, same track, 49 knots to Mutia, above level 230, and then 113, 35.8 to Charlie Alpha. And that's exactly what we have in the FMC as well. Any questions on the departure briefing? No, very good. Mikolai, how can I change the park and brake type of work? I mean, from this realistic one to that sim where I don't have to hold the park and brake button. You can't. It is going to be the realistic one. And Carter, are the CTD issues fixed? Well, Microsoft claims so, but I'm only going to believe it after I've flown it for a couple hundred hours. Then, Will, what is your first action if the FMC states using reserve fuel? Well, the first action is to check that I haven't entered any bullshit in the route, because that is the most likely reason why it's doing that, provided you have made a proper flight planning. And the second thing then, if it turns out to be correct, is to check if I have the correct landing runway in and stuff like that, because the highest probability is that you are actually have done a mistake yourself. So first of all, check your own actions, and after that is done, we would then go on and check that we don't have a fuel leak, so the fuel used plus the fuel on board adds up to what we've loaded on the ground. And if it turns out you don't have a fuel leak, but you just have insufficient fuel, then the next question would be, can you commit to land at your destination airport? Because if you can commit to landing there, then you can dump the alternate fuel and use the alternate fuel to go on to your destination. However, in order to commit to land there, you need to be sure that you can actually go down. So that making sure would, for example, be thinking about, is it a single runway airport, or does it have several runways? How's the weather over there? How's the traffic situation? How much delay am I likely to encounter over there? And things like that. And when you come to the conclusion that you probably can commit to land there, for example, if you were flying to Frankfurt in good weather, Frankfurt, 3 runways that can be used for landing, then I would certainly commit to land at the destination and then just use the alternate fuel to get to the destination airport. Okay, so let's do a little bit of mathematics, shall we? Getting my virtual performance tool open right now. Alright, so here it is. Let's see then, we know performance-wise, we know that our weight is correct, so I am skipping over that check right now. So let's go for the performance calculation straight away. At Jakarta, runway 25 right, so we'll take November 3 intersection. Yeah, we'll take it as a wet runway, because looking out, it's not raining, but the visibility is not very good, and the overall weather just looks a little bit like it may have rained earlier on, or there may be rain coming up in the future, and overall it just looks like a very moist atmosphere, which might make the runway damp, which then would be considered wet anyway. So for the dispatch calculation, we can see maximum takeoff weight is possible even from the intersection. So let's go back to our flight deck then. We have 66.1 as a takeoff weight, and that gives me a 24k takeoff at 39 degrees. So 24k at 39 degrees, 94.1, 93.4. That's that difference is coming from the fact that the aircraft does not yet know that we are going to do a pressurized takeoff. So right now the air conditioning system is not pressurized, but we've already started the APU, so if we are going to put that online right now, then it will sense, okay, I have pressure now, and then it's going to readjust the calculated N1 down here. So you can see now it's changed to 93.3 versus 93.4 from the performance calculator, so that is actually quite alright then. Difference of 0.1 is definitely acceptable. But that's probably where it comes from. We have an OAT of 30 cents over here, so if I make this 31, like we have in our performance tool, then 93.4, yeah. Alright, flap 5 takeoff and 5.7 units. And for the takeoff speeds, we have a wet runway, so 32, 41, 47. That's within 1 knot of what the FMC has calculated, so let's go for this. Okay, trim 5.7 units. Somebody asked me earlier on how I'm trimming, because I don't seem to be clicking on the trim wheel. And that is actually correct. I'm using the switch on my control column here to trim the airplane, because that is exactly how we do it in real life as well. You don't move the trim wheel unless your electric trim is actually failed. So the trim wheel is only the last resort. MFRA 1034, that matches, and that is pretty much our performance calculation completed then. L34NDRO. We wrote about the crashes to desktop. I haven't touched the simulator since then. Have the errors been fixed? And I see you don't use GSX. For what reason? No preset for the 800 yet. Let's start with the crashes to desktop. Microsoft says they're fixed, and they recommend that you are running the latest Windows update, thereafter reboot the computer, and then it should be fixed. That's what Microsoft says. Now, I don't particularly trust that. However, I'm just going for it. I have turned the online services back on, and we'll see how things are going to develop. Regarding the second part of your question, I see you don't use GSX. For what reason? The reason is I find the passenger boarding to be totally bugged in GSX, and that's why I'm not using it for that. What I will use it for in a few moments is my pushback, hoping that it's not going to bust my tires once again like it did on yesterday's live stream. But we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen with that. I'm hoping that everything's going to go well, but we'll see about it when we actually get there. So, let's actually go for it. Let's call GSX and request pushback and departure. So, park and brake is set. We'll check handling from Lion Air. Chuck spin can be removed. Alright, so let's wait a little bit and see what is going to happen now.
Hello, Captain, we are ready for pushback.
So this is going to take a while, so let's just go back to the flight deck. We still have a checklist to read, do we? So, safety inspection checklist and before start checklist. Services trucks, check. Maintenance status, checked. Battery on. Electric hydraulic pumps on. Landing gear lever down. Ship's library checked. RS mode selectors, nav. Gear pins. 1, 2, 3 removed. Light test. Yeah, we'll assume that checked. Oxygen. Test 100%. Yaw number on, nav transfer display switch is normal and auto. For the fuel wheel, we have 6.7 on board. We need 65868 and 4 pumps on. Cabin utility, RF galley power on, emergency exit lights armed, fast modes on, window heat on, air conditioner pressurization packs auto bleeds on set, pressurization mode selector auto, instruments cross checked, auto brakes RTO, hydraulics normal, speed brake. Down detent, park and brake set, step and cutoff which is normal. Wheelbar fire warning checked, radius, radar and transponder set standby, rudder and aileron trims 3 and 0, takeoff briefing discussed, PA complete, FMC CDU set, M1I S-Box, automatic reduced 24k, speeds 33, 41, 47 set, stub trim 5.7 set, performance weight and balance, sign send, phones off, EFB, airplane mode stowed, flight windows and cockpit door locked, doors closed, and passengers seated before start checks complete.
Release parking brakes.
Alright, so we could read a whole checklist in the time that it took GSX to get ready. Well, anyway, before start checks below the line. Air complex off, anti-collision on, parking brake set, transponder rolled off, before start checklist complete. And there is no ATC online, so let's go.
Commencing push. All engines clear, start at will.
Okay. And I did not miss anybody behind as well. Why is that stair not standing behind the red line? No comment. Recently had a case where somebody almost ran into a stair that was not parked correctly. But the pilots noticed and they stopped the airplane and requested the ground crew to remove that stair from the parking stand. In the aftermath, somebody took a photo of it and they found out that had they continued, they would actually have clipped the wing. Okay, beyond the red line, start number 2. And guys, keep the questions coming. I'm gonna answer them as soon as we're airborne. And complete the 10 checks. So we have N2, all pressure, N1. By the way, something I found really interesting is that Flight-Tech2Sim has pointed out all those things that could be optimized in the flight model, but he hasn't actually talked about the engine start, because that one could actually take quite some optimization. But that is something which I myself have, by the way, only very, very briefly talked about as well, because I know that it is work in progress. So they are still working on the engine start model. And in case you guys are wondering what should be different, it's basically the timings that aren't quite alright yet. So I'm going to show you when we start the engine number 1. So we have starter cutout, monitor 2, isolated pack because it is hot outside. Starting number 1. Now let's start the timer. And first of all, the N2 should start more steadily.
Set parking brakes. Waiting for confirmation for good engine start.
Yeah, thanks, you can go straight away.
We have a good engine start. You can disconnect.
And only now, at about 20%, the N1 should actually start rotating. The oil pressure should also come up quite a bit later. And once fuel is introduced, the engine should run up at a quicker pace. So in real life, you're looking at about 40 to 42 seconds for the engine startup. While in the Pmdg, we have the timer running over here, so we can see that it's going to take quite a bit longer. So now the engine startup should be completed. You can see it's only at around 45% N2 by now. So that should go quite a bit faster. But as said, the developers have all the data. They in fact have several engine start videos from the real plane. So they will be able to fix that whenever they find some time for it. And I know that it's on the agenda, so it is going to come. Okay, flight control track. Up, down, left, right. And where's the ground crew? Are they clear yet? No, they're still working, so we're gonna wait with the rudder. Bobby Nonuts, will we getting a keyboard mode for the FMC like we had in the P3D version? Yeah, we would hope we would get one, but Asobo does still block it. So right now C++ gauges can't do it. So yeah, as soon as it is technically possible within the simulator, we are hopefully going to get it. But for now, by the way, what is going on down here? This is taking ages once again. Standing there doing nothing. Ah, come on GSX, this is ridiculous. Have I missed something? No. Abort pushback, off you go. GSX has the potential to become such a nice add-on. Okay, rudders, left, right, before taxi checklist. Generators on, APU off, start switches continuous, probe beat on, anti-ice off, air conditioning, pack throttle bleeds on, isolation off, auto. Flaps, 5 required, 5 selected and green light. Step trim, 5.7 units required set. Start levers idly turned, flight controls checked, recall checked before taxi checks complete. Alright then, let's go. So, brake released, let's see if it's gonna start rolling today, or if GSX blew our tires once again. Ah, it's rolling. Okay. I'm positively surprised. Alright, so second taxiway to our right hand side. And then all the way to the end. Clear on the left. Clear on the right. And November Papa 2. Clear on the right, clear on the left. And is it just me, or did the frame rate just seriously deteriorate after I have aborted GSX? Such a nice add-on, isn't it? By the way, as a funny matter of fact, whenever somebody is uploading a video to YouTube, YouTube is asking if the video contains any controversial topics. And today, for the first time, when I've uploaded a video that's going to be published later today, the automatic engine actually recognized my discussion of GSX as a controversial topic. Normally that is meant for politics and stuff like that. I found that quite funny. And as somebody's asking again what the route of flight is, we're going from Jakarta to Bali. I'm really looking forward to the Bali scenery, by the way. It's got a very, very nice approach. And the scenery itself is looking really good as well. So far in Msfs I've only landed there once, and in P3D I landed there 2 or 3 times. By the way, thank you very much for waiting over here. Thank you very much. So in P3D I've only landed there once, and that was with the DC-6 when I flew my around the world tour in the DC-6. But I still have to finish, by the way. I managed to fly it all the way from Namibia, over the US, South America, and Australia, and Japan. But I've only managed to get it all the way to Bali, because when I landed it at Bali, the 737 went into beta, and then of course I had different flights to do than spending all the long haul in the DC-6. But it's such a nice airplane, I really need to finish that tour. And of course I've flown the tour without GPS, so all just by conventional navigation. And a little bit of dead reckoning over the oceans, by the way. Okay, before takeoff checklist to the line. Config, check, flaps, 5, green light, step trim, 5.7, set. Takeoff briefing. This is going to be a left seat takeoff on runway 25 right, flaps 5, noise abatement 2. Takeoff speeds, wets 33, 41, 47, packs auto, bleeds on, anti-ice off. Sit straight out with a left-hand turn and actually with a right-hand turn, climb to 6,000 feet, EOS it straight at 3,000 feet. Any questions? Okay, cabin secure before takeoff checklist complete down to the line. Jakarta traffic, line 022, taking off runway 25 right. Okay, clear on the approach. Before takeoff checklist below the line. MCP. Set. Transponder. TARA. Strobe lights on. Landing lights on. Before takeoff checklist complete. Timing. Stabilized. Set takeoff thrust. Takeoff thrust set. Indications normal. Check. Yep, that was the dead band. Gear up. LNF. Command A, back up. Flaps 1. Flaps up. Flaps up, no lights. Remain on local QNH. VNAV after takeoff checklist. So air condition and pressurization is at 1.8, climbing and set. Altimeters to go. Okay. So next up we can climb to 8,000 as per the set. Which is still an altitude over here, by the way, not a flight level. Alright, let's climb to a higher level now already, so I'm just going to delete all those restrictions. And since we cleared the flight level, set standards. Passing 8-3, climbing 220 after takeoff checklist complete and the cabin crew is released. Right, since I just saw it in the comments below, somebody's posted his serial key as a proof that he's not a pirate. Guys, never ever post a serial key in public. Never. Okay, let's do the 10 checks real quick. And by the way, this very person, you've posted something earlier already that identified you as a pirate. Maybe you have not pirated this one, but you've pirated another one. So, sorry mate, you're out. So, Nikolai, what's the worst thing about the Boeing 737? Well, the worst thing is for sure that it doesn't have any proper place to put your foot on. So, that's the very big plus in the Airbuses. It has the table. In the 737 you've got to use a tablet of some sort. Some actually just use the tech lock. But, apart from that, it's a well-designed airplane. It's a well-designed airplane. Pat Pilot, do I know if it is possible to edit the Aster textures? Yes it is, but I don't know in which file that is located. Micha, is offset used in real flight in the FMC and why? Yes it is used, and depending on the part of the world where you fly, it may either be used to deviate around weather. So, for example, in over open oceans, so for example over the Atlantic, offsets are usually used to deviate around weather cells, while for example over Europe we normally use headings and request headings from air traffic control. But offsets would be used for that. Then of course we have the strategic lateral offset procedures when flying over the North Atlantic, so you are normally flying either 1 or 2 miles to the right of your track. And other parts that you might be using offset for is yeah, well, air traffic might ask you to go offset on a tactical basis, for example, because you are flying faster than another airplane and you might overtake it. But I haven't personally had that happen yet. So, mostly used for deviating around weather in regions of the world where ATC coverage is very sparse. So over Europe you're just going to go on headings, but for example over the North Atlantic you might be using offsets rather than using headings. As far as I know, and this is just second-hand knowledge, in Asia they mainly use offsets rather than headings to avoid weather as well. However, that is a second-hand knowledge from a friend of mine who flies the 777 and flies to Asia often, but I cannot confirm or deny it myself, so if somebody knows better then please put it in the comments. Then, Michael, what does the map function do in the weather radar panel? So, basically, it is tilting down the weather antenna and removes the ground clutter suppression, so that the weather radar is going to reflect off the terrain, and thereby you can draw a map of the surrounding terrain using the weather radar. Then, Rox, what livery am I using? I'm using the Lion Air livery, and there are a lot of very nice looking Lion Air liveries on flightsim.to, so I downloaded this livery from flightsim.to. Then, Srihari, at the moment I believe OPT is the only software for realistic performance calculations. Is that correct? Yes, so at the moment the virtual performance tool is the only software that can do really professional takeoff calculations for the Pmdg 737s. Of course there is TopCat, but if I'm totally honest, I never really liked TopCat, and the results TopCat give are different from the results that my EFB performance tool that I'm using in real life is giving me, while virtual performance tool is actually matching the real one pretty well. So I have to say that I'm really happy with Virtual Performance Tool, and I'm very much looking forward to see what Pmdg's own EFB is going to look like in terms of the performance calculations. But if I'm totally honest, I haven't seen Pmdg's new EFB yet, so I don't quite know what it's going to be like. Tom, what's our flight time today? We're looking at about an hour and a half. And SXM 151, am I using Alpha India group traffic? Yes, I am. German flight simmer, is there an indication for brake temperature? How to check brake temperature after a rejected takeoff? So, brake temperature is optional in the 737s, so if you have it, it's on the system panel right below the hydraulics. So we can just about activate that. Aircraft displays last page, brake temperature indication. So this is what it looks like. But the vast majority of airlines don't even have it, because Boeing has published cooling tables in the AFCOM and in the onboard performance tool, and all airlines are just using those tables instead of fitting additional sensors to the airplane, which would increase the weight, of course, as well. And then you would just go into the tables with the speed that you had, the weight, the temperature, when you rejected the takeoff. Then, Cabanos, what do you think about pirates? Well, my thoughts about pirates are twofold. First of all, there are those driving ships around the Caribbean, robbing some state-owned transports. Those I can sympathize with, probably. And then there is the kind of pirates robbing flight sim add-ons. And I don't think I have to voice my opinion about them in this stream, because it should be pretty much known what I think about people who steal software. Because that's just what it is. That's what pirating is. Then, Noob Hunter X Me, where do you get the inputs for the selected and outside temperature? So, you are referring to the ones on the N1 limit page, I guess, that are on the ground, where you have the cell and the actual outside temperature. For the actual outside temperature, go to the HOTAS and take the temperature from there. And for the selected, that comes from the onboard performance tool. So we have done that calculation on our departure, and I can just bring it up once again over here. And over here it says selected temperature 39 degrees. So that's what we've been using for the takeoff. So 24K is our rating, so we would select that. And then we go to selected temperature 39 and we select that. So it has to be calculated from the performance tool. And for those of you wondering and who don't want to subscribe to an external service, Pmdg is of course going to include a takeoff performance calculator with the EFB that is going to come, don't know, maybe at the end of next month or something like that. At least that's what they're hoping for. It should go into beta mid next month, and then hopefully by the end of the month it should be ready. But of course, the number of issues found is going to make a difference. So if everything goes well, it might be a very quick beta. If further input is needed, it might be a shorter beta. Bonner, do you expect a rainy arrival into the destination? Well, looking at the weather forecast, I would say overall the forecast is telling us that we should not have any rain. So the forecast is few clouds at 1600 feet and scattered clouds at 1600. So I don't expect any rain. However, light rain showers might not be mentioned, so there is always a possibility that we could get some rain over there. Then someone's asking, does it have a multimode receiver? Not yet, but it is work in progress, so the multimode receiver is going to come. Elling, how did I get the job at my current airline? Through cadet program, or if not? Or did you get an offer based on grades? So at my airline I joined as a cadet. I have completed my flight training in an external flight school, and then I joined my present airline as a cadet. Then Tonda, where did you get the OPT? That is from a website called virtualperformancetool.com. Michael, when you do the flight control check on the ground before takeoff, how do you disconnect or prevent the nose wheel from turning when pushing the pedals to check the rudders? Just hold the tiller. So the tiller is going to move along with the rudder. And if you just hold it and prevent it from moving, then it cannot, then it can just not move. WS787, why is engine 2 the first engine to be started? Okay, so that is, first of all, it comes down to tradition. Second of all, it comes down to the left side, so the engine number 1 side, usually being the side where there may be passengers walking or something. Of course, that shouldn't be the case during engine startup, but in some cases, with a broken ground power unit, for example, you might be starting an engine on stand. And another reason is if you have a look at the way that the air conditioning system works, you have APU bleeder entering the left side, so the side of engine number 1. Then it's going through the isolation valve towards engine number 2 for the engine start process. So if you're starting number 2 first, you can isolate the right system from the left system, and then you can already use the right hand side for air conditioning, while the left hand side is still being used to start up the engine. If you did it the other way around, that wouldn't work. And just be aware that my answer to this question might actually not be totally complete. There may be more reasons, but this is like the most common things that would come to my mind right now. Also, another one to add over here is that if you are actually doing start using an external air conditioning unit, then you will be using the then you will be starting the left engine first, and that's because later on, to start the right hand engine, you need to increase thrust on the left engine. So if the ground crew stands on the right hand side where the plug for the headset and everything is, then it's a little bit safer for the ground crew that way around. And HASU, you have a lot of free time for a pilot. Well, the answer is, I have free time right now. I had it yesterday morning, but in the afternoon and evening I will be flying. So today I'm going to Mallorca once again, just like yesterday afternoon. So I'll have to go to work at around 1300 Zulu. So, yep, I have a little bit of free time at the moment, but I'm actually using it for the live stream, and I will be flying later on. Then, John Boy, going back to Flight Deck to Sim, what are your views regarding the autopilot not maintaining the correct altitude during a turn at low speed, dropping around 400 feet? Yeah, I can tell you that. Have you just seen like a minute or so ago in the stream that we had a wind shift where we encountered quite a bit of turbulence and the wind shifting around? Now, the autopilot in the Pmdg airplane is configured to be able to cope with those wind shifts very, very well. However, at high speed. And during the beta we used to have a version that was configured to maintain altitude precisely, and when those wind shifts happened, the autopilot got all messed over and the airplane would sometimes climb or descend 1,000 feet. And right now it is configured so that it's able to compensate for those wind shifts very, very well, which however comes at the price of the autopilot not being able to maintain altitude very well at a slow speed because its vertical pitching moment is strongly reduced. So the current is a compromise between in which situation flight simmers will be for the vast majority of time they are flying, so in high-speed flight, and situations where the flight simmer is in only very short while of the flight, so in low-speed flight. So right now it's working for, let's say, 90% of the flight time, or probably 95-99%, and only during 10% of the flight time, or 1% or 5% or whatever you want to take, depending on the length of the sectors that you fly, it might be encountering issues. So that's the compromise we have at the moment. That is going to get reviewed now that the 800 is out, because now developers have a little bit more time in stuff like that. And it might very well happen that the complete pitching channel of the autopilot gets reprogrammed in order to cope with that a little bit better. But if you are wondering what it would look like if that protection was not built in, just have a look at the Phoenix A320, which doesn't have that protection. And you can see in the Phoenix, when you are running into a wind shift, the airplane is quite significantly changing its altitude. However, it is perfectly maintaining its altitude at low speed. So that is kind of the opposite of what the Pmdg is doing at the moment. So that's the story behind why it has problems maintaining the altitude in low speed turns. And Deadpool Gaming, can you do 80 foot a minute landing? Yeah, of course. The question is, do I want to? Because the Boeing manuals very clearly say that you are not supposed to do landings like this. You're supposed to put the airplane right on the marker without any fiddling around trying to make it smooth for passengers. Then Elling, is the Speedrun bug after takeoff fixed? Well, it depends on what you want to see as a bug there, because the Pmdg 737 is doing exactly what the engineering manuals say. And initially, I as well told the developers that what it's doing is just wrong. The developers got really confused by it, and they gave me a call and told me, here, those are the engineering documents saying exactly what it's doing. And they gave me the actual documents. And indeed, the documents say that it's doing exactly what it's doing in the simulator. However, what I can say as well is that the engineering manuals are not what the actual airplane is doing. So the actual airplane is behaving different than those manuals. And that is something that will be looked into over the course of the next couple of months. But in order to actually replicate what the real airplane is doing here, which is certainly not what the manuals say, it might be necessary to do extensive video recording and so on. Basically, what the real manuals are saying is, regardless of the trim that you had for takeoff, the airplane will go to a certain trim setting at a certain speed. So for example, at 160 knots it should go to 4 units of trim. And that's why you hear the Pmdg 737 trimming so much after takeoff, because it goes to 4 units of trim. And then when the speed has increased by 10 knots, it's then going to, I don't know, maybe 5 units or so. That's why you hear trimming all the time. And that is exactly what the engineering manuals say. But it's wrong. It's not what the actual airplane does. So I don't know what exactly is going on there and why it's going on, but that is something that will need extensive research in the actual airplane to fix. So that will simply take time. And if I'm totally honest, until now the focus has been getting you the 737-800 and things that are going to take very long, like the autopilot pitching channel, like the engine start, like the speed trim system. That is stuff that is going to be tackled now that the pressure getting the 800 out is kinda relieved. And if I'm totally honest, I think that is the right thing to do, because you guys wanted the 800. And none of these bugs I would consider anything of a showstopper. The simple fact that no real 737 pilot has yet complained about the engine startup basically says it all. Like, people don't even notice that the startup in the Pmdg took 15 seconds longer than in the real one. And if you think about it, that is 33% longer than the start should be taking. And nobody noticed. Then, Roblox Pro 441. Is it possible to make the 737-800 spawn as AI traffic? I'm sure there will be some, some programs that are able to use it. However, by default, I think it's not possible. Then Peter, what do you think? How close is the flight behavior right now compared to the real thing? I'll combine that one with a question about flight deck to sim's finding about the aircraft being a little bit slippery. And flight deck to sim is absolutely right that the airplane is a bit slippery. However, I think overall it flies pretty well. Yes, it is a bit slippery. It does take a bit long to slow down. However, the downside or the problem with that is that the real airplane is doing a couple things that the Microsoft Flight Simulator engine just makes impossible. So when I set pretty much the same thing to the developers in the actual development, I once again went on a call with them and they told me, alright, so we can do it like this or we can do it like this. The problem is, if you make the airplane behave correctly at flight level 300, it's going to behave incorrectly at flight level 200 or 100. If you make it behave correctly at flight level 200, it'll be incorrect on level 300 and 400. So you sort of have to find a compromise. Now, sure enough, that can still be improved a little bit. There is no doubt about that, and I'm sure it will be improved a little bit. However, overall, I would say that the handling of the airplane isn't too bad. The points that Flight Deck to Sim is making, with the exception of the trim, in my opinion, are valid. But the problem is that it's just impossible to make it completely right, thanks to Microsoft Flight Simulator's incorrect handling of flight modeling. Then Rmp, is the Msf version closer to the real thing compared to P3D flight model wise? I think so. Dafza, did Flight Deck to Sim do your type rating? Unfortunately not. But I met him once already. Captain Uvers, when can we download Pmdg planes through the marketplace? I don't know. That's the part that I'm not involved in, so that's something that I can unfortunately not answer. Alright, so I'll just scroll up a little bit in the comments to go to some of the comments that I will have missed during the taxi out and stuff like that. So I hope that you guys who asked the respective questions are still here. Then Nathaniel is asking, a question regarding to the packs. When you're using ground AC, what position are they supposed to be? So when you're using ground air conditioning, you're turning the packs off. And if you look at the system schematic that I have published in the video about the air conditioning system, you're going to understand why. Basically, the ground air conditioning is inserted into the system after the packs, so air would be flowing back to the packs in the wrong direction, and that's why you just switch them off to avoid damage. And then you have a second question about the electric hydraulic pumps, and in my airline we turn them off pretty much as soon as we have completed the safety inspection checks, so that the hydraulic system can be checked for any leakages during the walk around. The background being that if the system is under pressure, it will be much easier to detect leaks than if the system is depressurized. I just need to do this, sorry guys. You know, men are not getting older, their toys are just getting more expensive. Then there is another question. Why do you need to enable the APU electrical generators first before disconnecting the ground power units? Basically, the 737's electrical system follows a simple rule: never turn anything off, always turn something on. So there is no automatic switching to another generator source, with a single exception of being airborne. When you're airborne and you're running on the APU generators and the APU is shut down, you're automatically transiting to the engine generators. But apart from that, there is no automatic switching. So if you had the APU generators available but not online, so the ground power would still be feeding the airplane, and you would disconnect the GPU, then the airplane would simply go all dark until the APU generator is being switched on. Lucky67T, do you think that ground friction and rolling is realistic enough in Msfs? Realistic enough is hard to define, but I think that it is rolling quite well. It should be accelerating a tiny bit stronger on the ground, and so it should have a tiny bit more thrust at a given thrust setting, but I think overall it is handling rather well. Single engine taxi is working pretty well, and the overall handling of the aircraft feels quite well. Then, Nabil Games, has anyone tweaked your NVIDIA control panel settings for Microsoft Flight Simulator? Certainly I haven't. Then, Grushpale, probably a stupid question, no there aren't any, but can a pilot hurt themselves when accidentally touching the trim wheel while the plane is auto-trimming itself? Oh yes. Have a look at the trim wheel. So sometimes you have your knee hanging around somewhere over here, and when the plane starts trimming and this part of the trim wheel hits your knee, I can tell you that hurts. I can tell you that hurts. Now when the plane is auto-trimming, then it's your fault. But now imagine you're doing the takeoff calculation and you start setting your trim without watching for the other pilot. If the other pilot has the knee hanging there, and then you start manually trimming. That is going to earn you a very unpleasant look from your colleague. A very, very unpleasant look from your colleague. Then, Rob B, could I explain the differences between carbon and steel brakes? Alright, so if you are using steel brakes, they work the best when they are cold, while carbon brakes work the best when they are hot. So a steel brake is going to be most effective just after landing, when you have to initially decelerate, while a carbon brake needs to heat up a little bit before it's actually going to be as effective. The second difference is, with steel brakes, the brakes are wearing down based on the energy that you dissipate, while carbon brakes are wearing down based on the number of brake applications. So with carbon brakes, if you're just not braking, then you brake a bit, you let them go, you brake a bit, you let them go, you brake a bit, you let them go. You are going to have more wear than if you lose the same amount of energy doing the same thing with steel brakes. Paul, where can we get your checklist? Unfortunately nowhere, because it is my company's checklist, and yeah, well, it's copyrighted, so I'm not allowed to fix it. I'm not allowed to share it with you guys. I have to apologize for that. Then, Bonner, will Pmdg make a 737-900? Yes. Jan, am I using GSX? Yes. Unfortunately. Roblox Pro 441, will I be doing a video on my rudder pedal settings? I've left them all on default. There is nothing that I could show you. I've just left it all on default. Peach, have I done arrival planning for Bali yet? No, I'm gonna do that when the top of descent comes in somewhere on the display here. For now, what I have in my FMC is the ANAF arrival for runway 09, but I'll check on that when we're getting closer. Metal Eye, is GSX sometimes not disconnecting pushback as well? Just on this stream it happened. Then, RLP, is it normal to not use the APU? For example, this summer I flew to Milan and the captain said they couldn't shut down the engines until they attached the ground power unit. Isn't it dangerous for ground crew? It is normal not to use the GPU, and in fact in my airline, normally we try to do it without the ground power, without the APU as well. However, in summer right now, we know we are going to need the air conditioning, so we're just flicking on the APU anyway. Also, depending on the country where you are, the ground crew might not connect the ground power unit until the engines are shut down. However, generally speaking, it is not dangerous to connect the ground power unit with the engines running. So in certain countries like in Germany, in the UK, in Poland, it is normal that they connect the ground power unit before you have the engines shut down, and that in that case it just saves maintenance, because the APU is maintained based on the number of cycles that you use it. So if you don't start the APU, then you are going to save maintenance cost there, and of course a little bit of fuel cost as well. But overall, if we have a look at the outside here, then we can see that there is a red line painted on the airplane, and this one is probably the pushback line. The Pmdg plane looks a little bit is painted a little bit different than my Airline's aircraft. So in my Airline we have a red line somewhere over here as well. And don't cross that red line when the engine is running. But if you're standing outside that red line and the engine is in idle, then you can safely stand there without the risk of being sucked in. Then, Bonner, I've been wanting to ask you this for a long time, since you're part of the Pmdg tech team. Does that mean that you will be part of the 777 development and give us updates? I will not be part of the 777 development, and I'm part of the 737 tech team, not of the 777 tech team, because I have no affiliation with the real 777. However, I will be on the beta team for the 777. So once the airplane is in beta, I will get it as well, and I will be able to make inputs. However, I will not be allowed to give you updates until Pmdg releases us from the non-disclosure agreement. Basically, when the 737 has been in development, I have not been allowed to say anything for a long time while it's been in beta. So that's been several months that I've tested the airplane already where I didn't say anything. And only after we have been released from the non-disclosure agreement, I could actually start sharing stuff with you, and that is when I uploaded my first video and created this channel. So, even though I will be part of the 777 beta team, I will not even be allowed to tell you that I have it already at a certain point. So, you will have to rely on Pmdg to give you updates there until the beta team is released from the NDA, which is usually like, don't know, between a couple days or maybe a week before release. F98M, when I save a panel state, is it then saved for all liveries when starting a flight, or do I have to make an individual state for each livery? A panel state is saved for all liveries, so they are independent of the livery. Oh guys, how do you intercept your ILS with approach mode when you have been vectored to it? I sometimes have issues with that. Basically, as soon as you're on the intercept heading and cleared for the approach, you are just going to arm the approach mode, provided that you have the correct ident showing and that a sensible localizer and glide slope signal are showing. What does that mean? You have the ILS indications up here. Let me just bring those up. So you have the ILS indications up here. Make sure that you are seeing the correct ident, so the frequency is replaced by the ident, and you see the localizer diamond on the correct side. So for example, if the center line was somewhere like this, you would want to make sure that the localizer diamond is shown on the left side, and that the glide slope diamond is within 1 dot from below or somewhere above you. So when all those conditions are met, just press the approach mode and the airplane is going to intercept the ILS automatically. Daniel, yesterday I had 2 of my zone temp lights illuminating during the whole flight. Air conditioning also showing the showing on the FO recall panel. Could you please elaborate what this is and what is the workaround? Alright, so the zone temp lights are the ones that we have up here, and basically it means that the airplane is not able to keep the temperature of the zone within the limits that are defined. And the obvious choice is to run the zone temp non-normal checklist from the QRH. So if you ever get any caution light illuminated in the plane, I recommend you to Google for a 737 QRH, and you are going to find one. There is one of Thomson available on the internet, which is like 10 years old, but nonetheless, it has most of the checklists. And then run the associated checklist. And basically, the light is telling you that the temperature in the respective cabin zone is very hot. So, reasons for that could, for example, be a failure of the temperature controller, and it might be entering very hot air. And the objective of the checklist is going to be to reduce the temperature in the respective cabin zone to an acceptable level. And chances are that you might have to descend the airplane, and in the very worst case you might actually have to open the door in flight. But just go through the checklist and it's going to guide you through all the steps. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm probably going to release a video in the next couple of days in which I am going to explain exactly how to handle a non-normal checklist. Because I see these questions coming up in a lot of my streams very often. So I might actually do a checklist about how to handle those problems at all. Then, Tilby Crazy. I've turned off the APU generators before switching to the engine generators. If that happened in the real life, what would happen? What steps would need to be taken? Well, first of all, the airplane is simply going to lose AC power. So, as I said earlier on, never switch something off, always switch things on. And if that happens, then the correct steps are just to put the new power source on and check for any malfunctions that might occur. So what's happening very often when you lose AC power is that you're going to get a display control panel fault on the PFD, and sometimes it fixes itself after 5 minutes. If not, you need to call engineering, because if you get the amber fault, then it's non-dispatchable. If you get the white one, you can go. But usually it's the amber one coming up. Also, I've had a case where the MCP would not turn on anymore, and then engineering had to come and they had to replace the entire MCP. So stuff like this can happen, not because the pilot is switching something off incorrectly in the vast majority of cases, but the most frequent case where we are losing AC power on the airplane is that the ground power unit just dies off. So I've had it a couple of cases at my home base where we are using external units that they simply ran out of fuel, and then the thing just shut down and you stood there without power. Couple other cases, what have happened is that somebody drove into the unit with a car and killed the unit. I've had a case where somebody just stumbled over the cable and pulled the plug. So things like that happens. But yep, just switch on power again and then see if anything broke. Roblox Pro 441, will Pmdg make a 737 MAX? Yes. Marco, my favorite long haul. A350? Then someone's asking, I've mentioned yesterday that Pmdg's reverse thrust now works with the TCA Airbus throttles. Couldn't find anything in the changelog or noticed any changes. Any clarification? Okay, so basically when you have the Thrustmaster Airbus throttles configured correctly for use with an Airbus, then it should just work the same in the 737 now. But if you need any assistance, I recommend you to either write in the Pmdg forums or send a support ticket at support.pmdg.com, and you are going to get very good guidance over there. Then, LamGP, would you say P3D or X-Plane is better than Microsoft Flight Simulator in terms of physics? Well, X-Plane, probably. But I'm not an active X-Plane user. However, from what a lot of different people say, X-Plane is better in physics than Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, I would say that Microsoft Flight Simulator is probably better than P3D. However, P3D does not. P3D does not, or is not as dynamic as MSFS. But MSFS does not support high-speed aerodynamics. So there used to be a case where there's been something wrong with the pitch and cruise. And then Pmdg contacted Asobo about it and asked like, yeah, could you tell us on the wave drag? And Asobo went like, what is wave drag? And the Pmdg developer working on that stuff is a certified real-life engineer. He has studied aerodynamics, so he knows his stuff, which is very, very nice, by the way. In the past, I've worked with a couple other companies as a beta tester, and when I've been using the correct professional terms for stuff, the developers always went like, what's that? In Pmdg, that is not the case. I can use the complete correct terminology, and they immediately know what's going on. So it's really nice to work with Pmdg. The developers really know what they are doing, and there is so much in the background that is just correct that I know is incorrect in other add-ons. That's just incredible. I really have to say that. Working with Pmdg is an absolute pleasure. These guys are professionals and they know what they are doing. Contrary to some other flight sim developers, which I'm not going to go into further about who I might be talking about. A no prober. Unfortunately, I've never been rostered with him. Pascal, what is the weight of a crew member? Is the weight of a crew member part of the zero fuel weight? Yes, it is. Feel this weight is missing when calculating performance with the virtual performance tool. Let's put it that way. You have the dry operating weight of an airplane, and then you have the and the dry operating weight actually includes the weight of the crew already. And the zero fuel weight, of course, includes the passengers as well. But the crew is absolutely included. And if you get differences between the virtual performance tool and the Pmdg 737s, those differences are very likely caused by a difference in the amount of weight that a passenger actually has. So virtual performance tool may by default be using something different than Pmdg. But I'm not 100% sure about that. That is just my best theory here. Metal Eye, how realistic is the Pmdg 737 compared to a real simulator? I would say it's pretty good, even though not perfect. However, the real simulator is not even perfect against the real airplane in all times. I know a few cases where the real aircraft is actually, where the Pmdg is actually closer to the real airplane than a full flight simulator. But likewise, I know cases where the full flight simulator is of course closer to the real airplane as the Pmdg. But overall, I like it. It is, in my opinion, the Pmdg is a very good tool to prepare for your type rating. So if you are about to do a type rating on the Boeing 737, then I would say very much, yeah, go for the Pmdg to build up your theoretical knowledge. You will of course not be able to replace any of the practical knowledge and practical skills with it, but in terms of theoretical knowledge, you can gain a lot with the Pmdgs. Then Elling, will Pmdg develop a new cabin like in the Phoenix, or is the one we have now the final one? To be honest, I don't know. I'll have to check. I mean, the cabin itself looks pretty good in my opinion already. On the galleys they could improve a little bit. But for the cabin itself, I think the seats are looking very good. The walls could use a little bit improvement probably. But overall, I kinda like it, the way it is. Then Mike, will the 737 series ever have 2D screens like an FSX? As far as I know, it should even have some already, but not an expert. But as far as I know, you should already be able to pop out the displays. But apart from that, it will never have stuff like the overhead panel, and so I mean, honestly, 2D screens are a thing of FS 2004, in my opinion. So tell me guys, the sun is setting right now, and I have a feeling we're going to arrive at Bali in the dark. Now Bali has such a nice approach. Do you guys want me to change the time and change it to maybe an hour back or something, that we are going to arrive in daylight, or do you want me to keep it on the real time? Aaron, thank you so much for the €1 donation. Thank you so much. Golan, are you planning a video on circuit flying so we can practice our landings correctly? I am planning on that. RLP, is it just me or are the strobe lights in Msfs not bright enough? Well, if I'm totally honest with you, the lighting model in Microsoft Flight Simulator basically knows more or less one brightness, at least if you're looking into a light. So, they probably aren't bright enough, but if they were at the correct brightness, your whole screen would probably just flash if you're looking into them. Alright, so you guys are saying that we should change to daylight, so guys, look away for a second, close your eyes, and open your eyes again. So here we are back in daylight. Alright, we're closing the top of descent already, so let's just quickly go ahead and do a little bit of our approach preparation. So we are probably going to fly a non-precision approach into Bali, but let's go ahead and find out what we're about to do. So here's our Navigraph charts. And in terms of the weather, Bali, we are looking at wind 130 at 13, 10 kilometers, view 1600, 27 degrees, QNH 1009. Alright, so QNH 1009, we can pre-select that, and let's see, they have a runway 09 over there. So 0927 is our runway. And yeah, it's going to be the runway 09 then, and they only have an Rmp or VOR approach, so in that case it's going to be the Rmp approach runway 09. Let's go ahead and quickly put that into the FMC. For the speeds, expect to be flying slow, especially for the one who's flying along here behind me. I've planned on 245 knots in the descent, so if you want to adjust your aircraft accordingly, then that would certainly be appreciated. There's something more over here that I just want to show you real quick. In real life, we always put the winds in it from flight level 310, 200 and 100. Now, if I just put those in and then click request, then the airplane is automatically going to request those winds for the correct flight levels. That is something I really like. So we can just keep working over here. And load. So that's for the lazy guys around you. You can always do it like this. And for the rings, runway 09 it's going to be, and we have 111, that's for 3 times the cruise level, then we have 10 and 4. Minimum's 277 based on LNAV and VNAV. And here we go, final approach course 087, let's quickly put that one in as well, and then we can start our approach briefing. So, 087 and 087. Right, Mom V1 Echo arrival. So, let's start with our approach briefing then. First of all, something that we just quickly have to look into, I actually forgot to mention that earlier on, is something that we haven't seen before on the channel. So let me quickly grab the operational flight plan once again. And we have it over here. So, let's have a quick look into the weather chart, because you're going to see something there that we have actually not seen before on the channel. And that's this. Whom of you knows what this symbol stands for? Put it in the comments below. Dafsa, Aaron, you guys are actually absolutely right. It's an active volcano with an ash cloud. And the name around it is the name of the volcano. So we have the Semeru being active here. So volcanic ash is exactly the thing that we have to deal with on this arrival. And we've got to get ourselves a little bit more information about that ash cloud. So let's look into the weather tab of the operational flight plan here. So if we look into this, where is it? Where is it? There should be a SIGMAT about it that tells us exactly where the volcanic ash is. Question is just, do we have it? This is all about thunderstorms, Here it is, volcanic eruption Mount Semeru. And it's between the surface and flight level 140, moving southwest at 10 knots. So that's our volcanic ash cloud here, between the surface and flight level 140. Now, in real life, if this happens, and I've had it happen myself already when we flew to the Canary Islands at the beginning of this year, where the volcano on La Palma broke out, the first thing you would do is to review the QRH and the volcanic ash procedures. Now, for our flight simulation purposes, we'll just treat them as reviewed. But something that is certainly worth trying is to quickly put that into the Lex page. So we have a position at the south 0806, the south 0806.0, and east 11255.0. Let's quickly create a waypoint over here and put that one into the fixed page. Alright, so now we've marked the position where that ash cloud is. And I would be very careful here. Around that position, I'd probably even put a ring around it. Like, we don't know, well, it's moving southwest at 10 knots, and we don't know exactly how big it is right now. We could, of course, just draw the whole thing on it, but what I'm going to do, I'll just mark a 40-mile area around it. And in that area, I will not fly below flight level 140. In fact, I even want to keep a vertical distance, so let's say that we're not going to go below level 200 in this area. So now that we know where this ash cloud actually is, let's quickly have a look where we are going to be at the waypoints surrounding it. So Mothmo still level 262, Osiva flight level 177, and then Sarek above flight level 150. So we are going to be well clear of that cloud by more than 20 miles over here, when we are actually descending to the levels where the ash cloud could be. So that sort of gives us an idea where that volcanic ash might be. Now, it might still happen that the forecast is not all that accurate. Had that in real life as well. And when you are doing your descent, when it starts smelling strange in the plane, that's your indication that you should really try to get out of it. Also, you usually have a very markable top of the volcanic ash cloud, which does usually tell you very, very well where it starts. So it sort of gives you a visual indication which area to get out of real quick. Looking outside, unfortunately, it looks like Microsoft is not really showing volcanic ash clouds at all, which is unfortunate. It would be really nice to see those, but I guess we have to live with what we have, which unfortunately, once again, is limited. So, if anybody of you actually knows this area, is it this one here that's the volcano in question? Or, because certainly the marked area is around these mountains over here. So I guess probably this is the volcano that we're talking about. But, don't know, not 100% sure. Alright, so, Peach, I will be descending at 245 knots. So, cost index 6. Then let's start with the actual approach briefing. So, we have threats for the arrival we've talked about already. QNH blunder is one more thing over here. So, we have 1009 pre-selected already, and there is no HOTAS online from which we could confirm what's actually happening. Speed 250 below level 100, forecast pages filled in, rings around runway 09, 10 miles, 4 miles. And for the arrival, we're coming in from Mofmo via the Mofmo 1 Echo arrival for the Rmp Approach runway 09. From Mofmo, we're going southbound towards Osira. Let's have a look at that on the chart. 172, 35.2 miles. That's fine. Then left turn 108, 10.1 miles to Sarek, above flight level 150. Same track, 34.9 miles to Lusby, above 5,000 feet. And then 067, 14.4 miles into Kuta. And Kuta is like 15 miles out, so the speed that it's predicting here is fine. From there, let's join the Rmp Approach runway 09. We can find that on the chart 12-1 from the 20th August 2021. RF approach, final approach track 087, and the minimum is 277, which is set on both sides. MSA-wise, the highest in the north is 9,700, but within 15 miles of the airport, 3,500, so 4,000, let's say, is going to keep us safe as long as we're going to stay south of the airport. The approach itself, starting at Kuta on 089 towards Delta Delta 403, which is what we have over here. That one's 10 miles out, so let's put a 180 knot speed restriction in there. So 180 knots or less. Thank you very much, aircraft. And that is above 2,500 feet. From there we're going towards Delta Delta 404, also on a 087 track, and that's at 1,700 feet, and that is the final approach fix. We have a 2.9 degree glide slope according to the chart, with 2.9 degrees roughly in the FMC as well, and we're going down to a minimum of 277, which is selected. So reset MCP altitude, let's do that real quick. We'll start with flight level 250 initially, and then we'll take it from there. So, for the missed approach, we're going to climb on the runway heading 087 to 2,000 feet, and then turn right to Kuta to 3,000 feet and hold. So we're going 087 2,000 feet, and then to Kuta to 3,000 feet. There is no speed restriction, so if we have to go around, it's going to be toga, go around flap 15s at go around thrust, raise landing gear with a positive rate. At 400 feet, flaps 5, LNAV, flaps 1 up, and once we're leveling 3,000, we engage the automatics, do the after takeoff checklist, and decide on the further course of action. For a diversion, we need 2.2 tons of fuel. We're arriving at 2.8, giving us 600 extra kilos. 200 kilos resembles 5 minutes, so we have 15 minutes of extra fuel on board our plane. We're burning off 500, which is a landing weight of 62.1. So 62.1, let's have a look into the performance tool then, landing en route. Going to Whiskey Alpha Delta Delta. We have runway 27 in use, 2.5. It's a dry runway, 130 at 14, 27 degrees, 1009. Man, I wish I could be there in real life now. Anyway, landing weight 62,100, and we have... Oh, sorry, I chose the wrong runway. I'm sure that some of you have actually pointed it out in the comments by now, but at least I noticed. So, 10 knots of headwind, so 5 knots of veer of addition is alright. Let's do some calculation. So, order break 3 is 2,182 meters. And if we look at the chart over here, we have 3,000 available. And round about 2,000 meters, November 3 looks like a good exit. So I would say that is actually a good combination already. Flaps 30, order breaks 3. By the way, that is what you end up in 99% of the cases. But nonetheless, we're still doing it, because you never know what might or might not actually happen. Alright, so I would say that's the approach briefing complete. Let's do the descent checklist then. Pressurization, land out 0, anti-ice off, approach briefing fuel discussed, IS and outbox, checked and set. Descent checklist complete. Pet Pilot says I work for a certain airline because I put the 10 and 4 mile circles around the runway. Well, let me put it that way, there is more than one airline doing it. But certainly the airline you mentioned is doing it as well, but there is more than just that airline doing it. Then, Rmp, what is the longest ATC delay I've gotten this summer? 5 hours. So I've waited for a 5-hour slot, and we've waited for it all the time. It did not come forward. Then Nathan, does Pmdg track failures based on incorrect procedures over several flights? I got an Watson's zone temp light, and I wondered if it's because I didn't turn trimmer off before the battery as per the FCOM. They do track that. However, I don't know if the trimmer is being tracked. I know for sure that the overall cycles are being tracked, and the engine oil and stuff like that. But there is more being tracked, but I don't know exactly what. Because I've always just taken it from failures happen and that's it. Finale, Flight Simulator 2000 actually did have a scripted volcano on Hawaii, including lava and an ash cloud. Wow, that's nice. I actually noticed that within days of the volcano on La Palma erupting, there has been a scenery representing that on flightsim.to. I found that really nice. Then, Steon, what do you think is the better airliner overall, 737 or A320? That is a very hard question to answer, and it's going to come down on the particular airline's needs. From a pilot's perspective, I think the A320 is the better airliner, because, let's be totally honest, you don't notice the fly-by-wire in a normal flight, so that is not going to do much of a difference for you. And it is just a little bit nicer place to work in. Like, the flight deck is a little bit bigger, the aircraft isn't as loud, you have a table available, and yeah, of course, some say but the 737 is real flying and the 320 is computers, which is correct, but if I'm totally honest with you, in normal flight you are not going to notice that you have a fly-by-wire computer. You don't need to trim the airplane, but trimming happens on a subconscious level anyway in the 737. Maybe on the first 2 or 3 flights you're consciously trimming it, thereafter you are just doing it naturally, without actively thinking about it. So, in terms of how they fly, I would say it's pretty similar to one another, and it's those small things like, the aircraft isn't as loud, so you don't have to wear a headset on the entire flight. You have a little bit more space available. You don't have that ugly thing between your legs, of course. Now let's see if YouTube algorithm is going to catch that one out and mark this video as inappropriate. But that's just what it is. You don't have that ugly thing in between your legs. And overall, I don't know, the plane just flies nicer. Or the plane is to be flown nicer, in that it provides a nicer working environment for the pilots, if you know what I mean. That's why I would say the A320. German flight simmer, what are the numbers used for on the Yoke? I heard for call sign, but what if you fly alphanumeric or within 4 numbers? Yeah, they are designed to be used for the call sign, but they are going back to the 737-100, and back in the day, airlines usually didn't use even 4 numbers, but 3 numbers for their call signs. Nowadays, of course, if you have 4 numbers or if you fly alphanumeric, which basically is the case in 100% of all flights I'm doing in my airline, that thing basically becomes useless, and if I'm honest, I never use it. But some people use it, for example, to set the VREF speed, or to set the V2 or something like that. But comes down to personal preference, but that's sort of the idea behind it. Tripod. The Pmdg 737 can't do a level turn on autopilot apparently. That is incorrect. It can do that, but not if you're flying a very, very slow speed. And I've talked about the reasons for that earlier on. So, yeah, you will note it. Just go back a little bit in the stream and you'll get the full explanation. Then, Rmp, did you surpass your legal flight hours or did you end up flying the sector? I guess you mean yesterday's Palma flight, and yeah, I flew the sector. And today I'm going to Palma once again. Then Toby, hey, I was recently in a 737-800 cockpit and it was smaller than I thought. Can pilots fit if they are like 2 meters big? We have one colleague in my base who is 2 meters big, and believe me, it fits just about. So I've seen him smash his head into the switches more than once. But yeah, you just have to be really careful with it. Then Adam, or Adam, as you take it depending on where you live. Can you say hello to me with my name? Hello Adam. Hello Adam. Daniel, have you tried VR on SimUpdate 10 with DLSS? I haven't. But DLSS is known to cause issues with the Pmdg at the moment. So I would not recommend you to use DLSS at all. Then Pet Pilot, does the trim hurt sometimes? Well, I've talked about that in detail a little bit earlier in the stream, but yep, from time to time when your knee is too close to it, when it starts moving and this part of the wheel hammers into your knee, oh yes, that hurts. Then Mike, question, will Pmdg publish checklists, QRH, etc.? I don't think that additional manuals will be added over what they have at the moment. So, I'm honest with you, I have not read the complete introduction document, in part because it's written based on my feedback, so I didn't read the final document. But I think there should be checklists in there somewhere. But if they are not, just Google for 737 QRH and you will find the quick reference handbook where you can find the normal checklist somewhere in the beginning in the first couple of pages or so. Dafsa, what's the thinking behind adjusting the heading block to your current heading? It's basically most important if ATC gives you an instruction like turn 5 degrees left or right, then you can very quickly dial that in and execute the instruction. And the other reason is if you lose your FMC. So if the FMC fails, and believe me, it happens more often than one would think. I'm sure I've had like 6 or 7 dual FMC failures so far in the real plane, so it does happen. Which is a funny story, by the way. In my type rating, I thought that I would only have to pay like 50% attention during that part, because I thought, yeah, dual FMC failure, how likely is that to happen? That can't happen. Oh boy, it didn't take very long until I was convinced otherwise. It was in my first 2 months of flying or so that I had the first dual FMC failure. Anyway, so if that happens, you just quickly hit heading select and then the plane continues where it's supposed to go. Otherwise, LNAV will just disengage like this when the FMC failure happens. And now if the wind changes or something, your airplane is going to drift somewhere totally different. Also, in control wheel steering, the airplane in real life does not hold the bank angle very good, so it does drift off the heading that it's previously on. So, in Flight Simulator the thing is going straight, but in real life it might be doing something like this maybe? If you're in CWS, and then it's rolling to the other side and it's basically going left and right and you name it. So, that's why if you constantly adjust the heading block, if it happens you just hit heading select and you're right bang on back on track. Well, back on heading, not on track. Welcome to the 737. Cloud the actions. Are there some situations where the parking brake is blocked and you cannot set or release it? yeah, there is a funny situation of one crew who talked about the parking brake in real life, and in flight they set the parking brake. Unfortunately, you cannot release it in flight. So if you set the parking brake in flight, you cannot release it again. I'm not sure if Pmdg modeled that, by the way. I don't know. It's certainly not documented in the Boeing manuals. But yeah, that crew had to touch down with the parking brake set and then quickly release it after touchdown. So yeah, that did happen in real life. And regarding Flight Simulator, I will publish a video later today about why the airplane might not start moving after you have after your pushback when you want to start taxiing. We're going to go over different possibilities of what might be going on then. Nikolai, is it possible to miss your leg and accidentally move the rudder control mid-flight? Well, of course that is possible, but you just gotta be careful. And Murad, is there any company restrictions for hand flying the plane whenever you wish to? You are not allowed to hand fly the airplane above flight level 245. Below level 245 you can hand fly it. And that is a legal restriction, by the way, due to RVSM requirements and due to requirements on aircraft separation in upper airspace. So below flight level 245 in my company you are allowed to fly the airplane manually. Then, German flight simulator. How often do pilots fly manual? I mean, autopilot and auto thrust off during arrival and departure. Like, there are pilots flying all manual, for example, at level 100 till landing. You're talking to a pilot doing that, so I usually hand fly as much as possible. On departure, I don't really turn the autopilot on below level 100 ever. Usually I put it on after the acceleration at flight level 100 or at some point after that until flight level 200 or so. That's why I usually put the autopilot on. And in the descent, I aim to turn it off as early as possible. So, of course, it depends. If it's really busy in the place we're flying to, I keep it on for longer. Or if we are in the 12th hour at work already, then I might keep it on all the way till the landing checklist is complete. But in most cases, I aim to turn the autopilot off as early as possible. So, in many cases, even at flight level 200, flight level 220, and in most cases, latest at level 100. If the situation allows, of course. So if you're flying through thunderstorms and everything, if you're flying in a very, very busy airspace, I might keep the autopilot on for longer. But if the situation allows, I aim to turn it off as early as possible. Captain Shakir, do you have a favorite approach and departure? Hard to say, honestly. There are many I like. For example, the Rmp Approach Rmp 07 at Palermo is really nice. Or Tenerife is always really nice. Corfu. And Galileo, greetings to Indonesia. Yeah, flying in your country today. So let's get down 5,000 feet or something for the approach. Set altimeter 1009. Passing 13,500 to 75,000, no flags, stand by set. And the seatbelts can certainly go on as well already. Nikolai, have I ever flown to Innsbruck in real life? I have, but in a Cessna. And the Southern Aviator, am I rated on the 737 MAX? Yes, I am. Mike, since the recent 737 update, I now have to manually apply brakes in order to release them. Is that in real life as well? Yes, it is. So in real life, the parking brake is nothing more than a tool that fixes the brake pressure in its position. So you push the pedals down, then you pull the lever, and that is going to keep the pedals in the position. And that's the parking brake. It is literally only the wheel brakes, but they are being held in the position by the parking brake lever. And in order to release them, you have to push the pedals forward a little bit, and that is going to release the parking brake lever, so then you can, so then the pedals are going to move all the way back again. But that's the parking brake. It's not like a separate system or anything like it. It's really only the wheel brakes that are being held into position or held in the brake by the parking brake lever. But it's the same brakes. Then, Claudio, what is the longest flight I've done as a pilot, talking in block time? 7.5 hours on an ASK-21 glider. And in the 737, since I'm sure that that question was directed to the 737, it's round about something between 5.5 and 6 hours, coming from Jordan with a lot of headwind. Then Daniel, how frequently do I fly other aircraft in real life and in sim? Well, in real life, I think I've done 3.5 hours or something on single engine pistons this year, so not a lot really. And of course in real life it's the 737, be it the 700, the 800 or the Max, but the 737. And in the sim, well, before I started this channel I did a lot of flying on different types as well. But ever since I started this channel, I'm always thinking, yeah, either I can stream it live, and people mostly want to see the 737 on my channel, with occasional times showing other aircraft as well, but the 737 is really what the channel is about. And then of course for this year there has been so much beta testing that I have primarily actually flown the Pmdg 737. Because either it's on a live stream, or it's when I'm recording another video, or it's when I'm beta testing the aircraft. So it's a lot of 737s at the moment. Marcos, that parking brake system is the same as in an old tractor. Well, you know there are people calling the 737 a tractor, right? Michael, how does the 737 feel to me as a pilot with Pmdg versus the real airplane? Well, we have limitations in the simulator, of course. Starting with the fact that we don't have force feedback on our yokes, and that I'm not aware of many flight sim hardware that would actually have the same range of travel on the controls as the real plane. So that sort of limits the feedback that I can give here already. If you want detailed feedback, have a look at my review that I did on the Pmdg Boeing 737-700. I've done a full review on it where I'm going over details like that, and there is a whole dedicated section on the flight controls and on the flight dynamics that I can only recommend you to check out. And Galileo, any information on the development of the 737 MAX in Pmdg? It's going to come after the 747, that's all I can say for now. I don't have more information on that either. Then Pilot SB, when landing, should you turn the auto throttle off or can you keep it on? Well, in my airline it's mandatory to turn it off. But in other airlines you are allowed to keep it on. The reason why I would always turn it off is in the 737 you have the pitch thrust couple. So if you are changing the thrust, you have to retrim the airplane. And if the auto throttle is constantly changing the trim of the airplane, that is feeling horrible. I've tried it in the real plane, not during landing, but at some higher altitude. I've just used the auto throttle for a bit, and it felt horrible. So I would always turn the auto throttle off when I'm hand flying the plane. But in other airlines, in some airlines it's actually mandatory to keep it on. But I can absolutely not understand why. Well, I know the reason. It's because the auto throttle does less thrust changes than a human pilot does, and therefore less changes in the thermal load on the combustion chamber and the turbine section, and therefore reduced maintenance cost. But look at the price that it came with. Look at the crash of the second 737 MAX. It crashed because they forgot the thrust on the takeoff thrust setting, and Ethiopian Airlines is one of those airlines that normally flies with the auto throttle on. So chances are the pilots were just not used to having to move the thrust levers, and that may be part of the reason why they forgot the thrust and takeoff thrust setting, which led them to turn the MCAS back on and the stub trim switches back on, so that they have electrical trim, and that's what ultimately led to the crash. So, in my opinion, if you're flying manually, also handle your thrust manually, but there are different philosophies out of it as well. Mike, will I do a video on how to do Atops flights? Yes, I will, and I'm actually waiting for my for one of my friends who flies Atops in twin-engine planes in real life to help me out on it, because I don't fly Atops, so I want to have certain information on it before I start with it. Alright, all of that said and done, let's actually return to the flight over here, and let's start focusing on the landing. We have our first check to complete, which is actually not a lot during RF approaches, but nonetheless, frequencies, let's detune the ILS, we don't want an ILS frequency. So frequencies, not applicable, rings around runway 09, 10 miles, 4 miles, addons, not applicable, standby instrument set, courses 087, approach checklist, altimeters and instruments, cross-checked, approach aids, checked and set, approach checklist complete. And I'm going to answer the remainder of the questions after we've arrived on stand, okay? Okay, flaps 1, speed checked. And flaps 5. Okay, so we can descend to 2,500 feet for now. Let's go ahead and do that. Our speed is good, approaching the 10-mile ring, we have 200 knots ground speed. Cabin is secure by now as well. Body traffic line into 022, established 10 miles final, runway 09. Okay, next altitude, 1700. 9 miles to run, speed 170, very good. Approaching descent. 300 feet, Wiener path, speed intervent. And the runway is inside, we don't need any distance altitude checks. Get down, flap 15, landing checklist. Start switches, continuous, recall, checked, speed brake, arm green light, landing gear, down 3 green, auto brake, 3 set, holding in flaps, and flaps 30. Gear of +5 is all we need. 1000 above the minimum, set missed approach altitude, 3000, set, and complete the landing checklist. Flaps 30, 30, green light, landing lights on, landing checklist complete. Five on the continue. 3 wides on the puppies, correcting.
Approaching minimums.
Checked.
Minimums.
Continue. Brake up, thrust burst normal. One 100 knots. 80 knots. 60 knots, manual brakes.
Traffic Qantas 47 heading to 15 mile final for the Rmp Approach runway 09, touchdown time 22.
Dampers out traffic, line into 022, runway 09 vacated. Okay, we'll go over to the left. Runway clear on the right, clear on the left. Let's quickly do the cleanup. Right, start the APU. Then let's see where we are. Stand 17. This is 18. Can we get GSX to work? No. Not opening. Lovely. Okay, don't mess with it. We'll just take the next stand. And we have more or less 3 minutes, so engine 2 shut down. And this will have to do. Okay, then we have 2 blue, 1 red. Engine's dead.
Tempest traffic Qantas 47 is on a 5-mile final now for the Rmp Approach runway 09. Tempest.
Okay, transit shutdown checklist. Electrical on APU, fasten belts off, probe beats auto, anti-ice off, voice recorder on, air compacts auto, engine bleeds on, APU bleeds. Let's put that on as well. We have both engines below 20%, so anti-coil off. So exterior lights set, start switches off, auto brake off, speed brake, down attend, flaps, up and light, parking brake set, start levers cut off, weather radar off, transponder 2 on standby, CBR circuit breaker in, and voice recorder is cockpit door is unlocked. Okay, so let's get ourselves some ground services here. Well, I guess they probably will have air conditioning unit over here in Bali, so let's just request that one as well. Entry and exit via stairs, GSX. Via jetway, unfortunately without GSX once again, because it's just not working. Anyway, we still got our standard stuff here that we can request, so we'll do it like that anyway. At least those jetways don't sink into the ground, do they? Alright, so guys, welcome to Bali everyone. Now let's see how many questions came up in the meantime that I missed up on. So, the scenery in use is the Aerosoft Bali scenery. So, how is it flying the Pmdg 737 manually? Is it even close to real-life flights in the 737? If not, what's different? Okay, so, the main thing I find to be different is the pitch authority that you have, because in the real plane you can control it to the decimal of a degree of pitch. In Flight Simulator that is very hard because you have the very long range of travel of the control column in real life that you don't have in Flight Simulator. So the Thrustmaster Boeing Yoke moves backwards maybe 10 centimeters, and the real plane is easily 30 centimeters. So that's why I find it to be different in the real plane than it is in Flight Simulator. But Marcus, when would you choose an ILS landing over an RNAV? Basically whenever it is available. Patrick, can you please add an option to disable the TCSR button? You've got to make that request with Pmdg directly. They know my opinion on it, to put it that way. Then Elling, how have you configured your reversers? I've got the Honeycomb Bravo and I only got full reversers. Basically you have to play around a little bit with your throttles here. The way I'm doing it is that when I'm moving them beyond the idle position, I send a command to press the F1 key and thereafter to press the F2 key once. That's putting them into idle reverse. And when I move them further back, then I'm sending the F2 key continuously going to maximum reverse. So it's a little bit fiddling if you have no hardware that actually has a reverse access, but only a reverse button or something like that. Galileo, any information on the max? I've answered that one earlier. Finale, have I ever experienced turbulence so severe that I actually thought something like this isn't normal anymore? I have encountered, to quote it the way we told ATC, the very high end of moderate turbulence. But, no, nothing like I wouldn't say this isn't normal anymore. Like nothing that would actually have made my plane uncontrollable. Unless you take wake turbulence into account, because I did have a case where air traffic control in Malaga put me 2.5 miles behind an Airbus A330, so 2.5 behind a heavy, and we didn't know which type it was in front, and we only saw it on the taxi later, and at 50 feet it actually turned the airplane 30 degrees to the side. So, Big S. To be honest, this plane feels a lot more slippery than the Zibo. I've explained part of the reason for that a little bit earlier, so just go a little bit back in the stream and you will get information on that. Wayne, will Pmdg update the FMC to have the VNOV button instead of the descent button? I don't think that that's going to happen. FL360, am I going to open a members area in the future? Probably. German flight simmer, go around, passenger the toilet. Honestly, you have to make that decision very carefully if you are going to go around for that. It happened at 4 miles, so he was probably back in the seat by the time that we actually made our landing. But if you go around with a passenger in the toilet, and you're pulling the aircraft to like 20 degrees of pitch, you have to decide if that's the better option over landing the plane. Then German flight simmer, do I get slightly confused when I fly the A320 or CRJ in the sim for a week and then get back to the 738 in real life? No, not really. What does happen from time to time if I'm flying, for example, the A320 and you say flaps 0 versus flaps up, and then you get back to the real plane and all of a sudden you say flaps 0. The funny thing is that more than half of the captains I'm flying with have flown the Addons A320 before, so they smile at me and they know what I'm doing in flight sim, so they know exactly what's happening and they just say, ah yeah, speed check, flap 0. It's funny from time to time when this stuff happens. Then Daniel, does Pmdg have a built-in Aster? It's available as an option from the FMC. And Captain Shakil, is the 747 the next plane in the roadmap? No, the 777 is next, and thereafter it's going to be the 737-900, 777, 747, and then 737 MAX. And whatever is going to come thereafter, I have no idea. Tangpia, did we talk about upset recovery yet? Affirm, there is a full video available on it. Just search for UPRT or something like that and you should find it. Then German Flight Simmer, drop your message on Discord. Would be glad if you have a look at it. I will. Then Tom, is this standard scenery or payware? It's payware from Aerosoft. Jerry, I'm having trouble getting both Command A and B to work. I guess that is in case of an auto landing, and be sure that you have both courses selected to the runway course, both frequencies selected to the runways, and both minima set. And of course both flight directors turned on. But those are the primary points there: frequencies, courses, and flight directors. Master 9, how common are air stairs in the 737 across airlines? They are not all that common. It's mainly low-cost carriers and private jets or cargo airlines using them. And the reason for that is that they add a lot of weight, and in order for air stairs to be worthwhile, first of all you have to have an airline that is actually using not using jetways, if they can avoid it. Because if you are using jetways, then there's no sense in air stairs. So you have to have an airline that is primarily using walk boarding instead of jetway boarding. Then this airline has to fly to airports where stairs are not commonly available, or where there is a lot of delay encountered with the ground services attaching them. Because you literally save 30 seconds. So a short turnaround time also comes into consideration here. If you've planned a 60-minute turnaround, then you don't have to worry about those 30 seconds connecting the air stairs. But if you are doing a 25-minute turnaround, then 30 seconds are 30 seconds. That's like 1/5 of the entire turnaround. So that's where these things start playing a role. Then, Pat Pilot, why can't you put the no smoking to auto? My brother's a 737 pilot and he says he can. Yeah, you definitely can in the real plane. I honestly... Well, the reason Pmdg has modeled it this way is because one pilot who is a very close friend to Robert Randazzo says that in his airline they either have it on or off, because they are using it as a chime. And that's what's modeled in the Pmdg 737. It's modeled as a chime, so you either put it on or off. You don't want it to do any chimes automatically. That's why they don't have the auto position. However, in some airlines, the thing is not even connected to a chime anymore, but simply used as a reminder. For example, in the airline that I fly for, we have it in off whenever the cabin is not secure. We have it in auto after the passengers have been seated before pushback to indicate that we can start pushback. And then we have it in on to indicate that the cabin is actually secure for takeoff and landing. So we just use it as a reminder. And the actual switch is detached from any chime sound or whatever. I agree that it would be very nice if Pmdg could actually model this. However, unfortunately, I made that suggestion, it's been turned down, so we have to live with it the way that it is actually provided. Then, Claudia, what is the lowest possible cost index on the 737-800, if any? I've never seen any airline use anything lower than 6. The lowest is 0, and if you look for an airline using less than 6, then look, for example, at Sun Express. They are usually flying anywhere between 2 or 4. Then, Raven, which advice do I have from going from the 737 to the to the 737 from the A320? That's a good question. Well, you have to do more things manual, so things like ILS frequencies, courses, which are usually done automatically in the Airbus, stuff like that. So just think less automation, think more manual. But anyway, if you're flying the A320, then normally, even though you have your automation, you are still doing things manually. So, I don't know. I would say the most important thing is get used to longer checklists, get used to do more things manually. But there is no really getting used to there, because you can't get used to it in the A320, so just be careful in your type rating, watch everything closely, learn the SOPs, but you're doing that anyway. Higgin, what is the longest flight in the 737 I've done? That's been between 5.5 to 6 hours, with a very strong headwind coming from Jordan. Alright guys, so I slowly need to start getting ready for real life flying, once again to Palma today. So thank you very much for joining, everyone. I hope that you've really enjoyed the stream, and if I have a little bit more time available over the course of the next couple of days, I might be doing another one at this time of the day. So I'm really happy to see that there are so many people joining at this time. I really didn't expect that when I started my stream yesterday. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I'm looking forward to see you all again in the future. And finally, if you do want to support the channel, I'm always happy about donations over the Buy Me a Coffee link that you can find in the video description below. Or if you prefer to just stay on YouTube, there are always features like the Super Chat and stuff like that if you want to make a donation. So thank you very much for joining, everyone. I wish you all an excellent day, evening, night, morning, whatever it is when you're watching this. And I'm really looking forward to see you all again on the next one, hopefully in the next couple of days. However, I am still going to fly a couple more days after today, so we'll see you around whenever it fits. Thank you very much, and bye.